How would you describe Ladbroke Grove?
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Home sweet home, Ladbroke Grove. Edgy. I mean, not so much now, but yeah, edgy. So they were like, okay, the best way I can describe it is, I just had dinner there yesterday. All Saints Road, just off Ladbroke Grove, was known as the front line. So anything you needed in the underworld back in the day, where do you go? You go to the front line. And I remember this as a kid, because I used to go to the youth club around the corner, Tabernacle. Like, back in the day, the police had to ask for permission to walk down this road.
Wow.
From the powers that be. And it was mad. Anyway, my mum ended up working on this street, right? She was a minicab controller, and it was a glass-fronted shop. And all the madness that used to go on, she knew everyone. They all used to call her mum. I was talking to Kat from Red the Wolf yesterday, and we were talking about my mum, because he knew all the boys back on the front line.
He's a Grove boy, yeah?
Yeah. He's from Power Square, where we used to go to that youth club and knock about. So it was great catching up with him. I never met him before, but I always used to see him when I was a kid, driving his round in his Suzuki Vitara, all tinted up and that. So I told him that yesterday, I have to tell you something. It was, all of us kids loved it. Anyway, loved Ladbroke Grove, but the edginess of it was real. Like, sometimes you had to check around the corner, do you know what I mean? But looking back, it taught me everything I needed to know about street savvy. You know what I mean? And it kept me alive. You know, not knowing, you know, there's certain places you shouldn't be at certain times, and all that stuff. You know, important stuff. I think important stuff for life. And I think back about, and I look at my kids now, and I'm like, you're not gonna have any of those lessons. Like, so it'd be interesting to see how they grow up, because the area taught me a lot of about who I am and what I am. So I love it, yeah. And I got off the plane the other day, got out of Ladbroke Grove Station, and I was just like, yeah, home sweet home. Like, loved it, yeah.
Yo. And we're live.
All right.
Colin O'Shaugnessy.
Yes, how are you?
I'm good, man. Welcome to the show, man. Thanks
Thank you
for
for
stopping
having
off.
me. Yeah.
Yeah. We're gonna start at the beginning. Where were you born? Where did you grow up? And where are your parents from?
Yeah, cool. So, Irish background, grew up in Ladbroke Grove, London. So I grew up there in the 80s. I was born 78, grew up in what is a very different area to now. Challenging upbringing, I would say, just because of the way things were back then. It was not the area that it is now. So it was, if you think about the diversity of the area and all of the slumlord scandals back in the 70s, 60s and 70s, obviously end of the 70s, just coming out of that, that's where I grew up. So a lot of crack in the area. So I saw a lot from a young age, but loved it. Loved where I grew up.
So let's start right at the beginning, as I said. So what was it like in primary school, for example? So was it crack here at the primary, when you were in primary school?
I didn't, from young, from day dot, I saw all sorts of madness, yeah.
Okay.
So, but I didn't, it was normal to me. It wasn't a bad thing. It was just how life was. Do you know what I mean? So it was normal. And it was normal for all the kids, all one-parent families. Like, all of that was normal. Not having a dad, that was normal. You know, maybe Mark's dad would come see him every 2 months. He'd pull up in a nice gold Ford Capri it was. We all remember. We all used to run to the car, and Mark's dad would come. So all that, it was, looking back on it now, because my children have a very different experience, but to me at the time, it was just normal. But like, there was a crack house next door to my house, and I saw some things
that close
a kid should never see.
Okay.
So let's just give you one instance. I must have been something like 7 or 8, and I come home through the lift in Brunel Estate in Westbourne Park, and I come through around the corner, and I see my next door neighbour out in front of my door, on top of his missus with a knife to her throat. 2 crackheads. Their boy Stacey used to come, and my mum, when it got bad next door, my mum would go and knock on their door and say, "Give me the kid." And Stacey would lie with me in my bed, and we'd listen into the screaming.
Oh wow!
Through the council estate, innit?
Yeah.
So you can hear through the walls. And that's how I went to sleep many nights. Do you know what I mean?
Oh wow!
So yeah, but I mean, I knew that wasn't normal, but there was shit like that all around. So a very different place, but I love where I grew up. Ladbroke Grove, still in my heart. Yeah, love it.
What was, so around that same age, so primary school, 7. What kind of kid were you?
I was a good kid. I knew all the villains, and I knew all the good guys, and you know, because I was born and bred there, like I was always looked after without even really knowing it. You know what I mean? I used to walk all the dogs for everyone in the estate, so all the villains would have all their big muscle dogs. But I knew all the sort of nicer families as well. So it was a good mix. I was probably somewhere in the middle. I was cheeky, I was naughty, but I was never like a bad kid. You know, my mum ruled through fear, Rene, so because she had to go out and work and she couldn't be around, she had to rule through fear. So when I'm out in the street, which is where I grew up, something had to tell me, hang on, do you really want to make this decision? Do you really want to do this thing that your mate's telling you to do? So I get it, and it worked because I managed to stay out of prison. I grew up on the street, but I stayed out of all the major stuff. So it worked, you know.
How many siblings were there?
My brother, so I got one brother, full brother. I got 2 half sisters and a half brother as well. My dad was never around, so the dad is the connecting parent. Never really knew them or my dad growing up. He was still living local, but never saw him. So just me and my brother. He's a year and 3 months older than me, and we're like chalk and cheese.
Okay.
Like, we never got on.
Yeah.
Always fighting physically. So yeah, that's where I learned to sort of take care of myself.
And yourself, yeah. So what were you like at school?
I was all right. I excelled at school till I got a bit older and got a bit distracted by other things. But there were some challenges, right? So I was about 2 years away from going into secondary school. I couldn't write my name. Couldn't read.
You were what?
I was like a year or 2 years into going into secondary school, and I couldn't read or write my name.
Oh wow!
So my mum like discovered this, and she wasn't massively engaged because she was very busy. So my mum went down and kicked off with the school, and we did some extra learning at home and all that sort of stuff just to get me up to speed. And I ended up putting a lot of work in over the 2 years and got into a decent school. So that was the mission. But yeah, love school, sports. I was big on sports even from a young age. Knew everyone in the area. We were all very different community then to now. So everyone knew each other. I love where I grew up. I love my childhood. But I was a good kid. I was cheeky, but I was good, really. Not too much drama for my mum.
How did you keep it under wraps for so long that you couldn't? Could you read?
I don't have a full memory of it, but what my mum told me, and I remember my mum going down there and kicking off with the school.
Well, they never checked in to say, okay.
My mum was a single mum, right? So she was out working all the time. So she wasn't really engaged
in that way,
my learning as much. So all of a sudden, with like secondary school approaching in the next year or so, it was like, okay, where are we at? Where are we going to be able to send him? Yeah. And then it all came to surface.
Yeah.
It's like, what have you been doing with these kids for the last whatever?
Oh, wow.
It was mad. But anyway, it all worked out, yeah.
So how would you describe Ladbroke Grove?
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Home sweet home, Ladbroke Grove. Edgy. I mean, not so much now, but yeah, edgy. So they were like, okay, the best way I can describe it is, I just had dinner there yesterday. All Saints Road, just off Ladbroke Grove, was known as the front line. So anything you needed in the underworld back in the day, where do you go? You go to the front line. And I remember this as a kid, because I used to go to the youth club around the corner, Tabernacle. Like, back in the day, the police had to ask for permission to walk down this road.
Wow.
From the powers that be. And it was mad. Anyway, my mum ended up working on this street, right? She was a minicab controller, and it was a glass-fronted shop. And all the madness that used to go on, she knew everyone. They all used to call her mum. I was talking to Kat from Red the Wolf yesterday, and we were talking about my mum, because he knew all the boys back on the front line.
He's a Grove boy, yeah?
Yeah. He's from Power Square, where we used to go to that youth club and knock about. So it was great catching up with him. I never met him before, but I always used to see him when I was a kid, driving his round in his Suzuki Vitara, all tinted up and that. So I told him that yesterday, I have to tell you something. All of us kids loved it. Anyway, loved Ladbroke Grove, but the edginess of it was real. Like, sometimes you had to check around the corner, do you know what I mean? But looking back, it taught me everything I needed to know about street savvy. You know what I mean? And it kept me alive. You know, not knowing, you know, there's certain places you shouldn't be at certain times, and all that stuff. You know, important stuff. I think important stuff for life. And I think back I look at my kids now, and I'm like, you're not gonna have any of those lessons. Like, so it'd be interesting to see how they grow up, because the area taught me a lot of about who I am and what I am. So I love it, yeah. And I got off the plane the other day, got out of Ladbroke Grove station, and I was just like, yeah, home sweet home. Like, loved it, yeah.
Has it changed?
A lot. It's changed a lot.
In what ways? Obviously.
Well, I think, God knows how long ago it was now, maybe 30 years, 20 years ago, they started on that North Kensington regeneration project, gentrification, all that sort of stuff. So the good side of that was, of course, you know, the crack houses would start to dwindle, and you didn't see them as, all of that stuff sort of went away on the surface of things, which ultimately, of course, is a positive thing, you know. Some of the stuff you saw that kids shouldn't see. But anywhere in London where you've got a marketplace, you've got a strong community, right? And that's what I love most about home. But now, no one who grew up there, that I grew up with, no one can afford to live there. No one lives there anymore. And I walked down the Portobello Road yesterday, and it's all food shops. Whereas when I grew up there, it was all independence. You know, anyone could give it a go. You know what I mean? Open a business there. But now it's all mainstream. So it's changed in that respect. I haven't been back here long enough yet to really deep dive into it. I'm sure there's there's still some good stuff happening. But yeah, it looks very different.
So how was it? We're gonna go back now. So you writing and reading and everything. How was it going to secondary school then?
Intimidating, because of the secondary school that I went to. Was in Fulham. It was called the London Oratory.
The London
Oratory.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just behind Chelsea Football Ground, Stamford Bridge. And in my eyes, it was a posh school. It's a proper posh school. It wasn't private, but it's probably as close to private as you could get while being state. And I always remember, I mentioned I was keen on sport, right? So I was playing rugby. All my family in Ireland, big rugby family. So when there was an opportunity to play rugby, I saw all my cousins doing it. I was like, I'm in. Anyway, when we go and play rugby on a Saturday, we'd have to wear our school uniform. And where I lived, my school uniform was like a big flag. Just come and rob me. Rob me now. Do you know what I mean? So that was interesting. But it was much bigger. And I was surrounded by people I didn't really have any connection with, because they all come from nice families. And I remember feeling different in that respect. The sport opportunity was great, and I'm a pretty social person, so I just got straight into sort of making new friends and stuff like that, yeah.
Were they welcoming?
I wouldn't describe it as welcoming. I'd describe it as processing. So yeah, it felt like we were processed. There was a series of tests.
No, I mean the kids. You know, obviously they're from different.
Oh.
So obviously you're from your area.
Yeah.
And everybody in that area, you're all similar mentalities, seeing similar things. But now you're going to a different area to go to school.
Yeah.
What were the other children? What were they like? Were they like?
Let's put it.
Or did they look down on you?
Let's put it this way. No, there was no looking down. But let's put it this way. I never really had any trouble.
But that's because of you, right? That's not.
Well, I just think from where I grew up and the person that had already made me, I think that came across quite clearly.
Okay.
I remember, and I'll tell you why I'd say it. I think that was it. Like when I moved away from the area and like I moved to Australia, I had to consciously change the way I communicated with people. Because in Ladbroke Grove, like it's just straightforward. Like people will tell you straight. And because I'm 6'3" and I got a shaved head and like I seem to be coming across as maybe a bit aggressive. So like I had to tone it. Do you know what I mean? But I'm like, that's just how in Ladbroke Grove, that's just how you talk. I'd imagine a bit like New York.
Yeah, direct.
It'd be a sort of similar type thing. So I was very conscious about that. And I think it must have been a sort of miniaturized version or a similar version as I moved to that school, just because of the way I spoke and just handled myself. But yeah, I never really had any drama. So always tended to get off on the right foot with people. That's how I would say it.
Yeah. So how were your grades like?
I was all right until for the first couple of years in secondary school. I was good. I was flying. And then you get to that age where the other distractions come into play.
Like what?
Girls, obvious one. Some extracurricular activities. So I was a big fan of hallucinogenics at quite a young age.
Okay.
So I delved quite deeply into all of that. So a few sort of party drugs, no hard drugs, because I saw enough of that nasty shit. So it was all fun stuff, you know what I mean? And yeah, I just fell in love with partying girls and still managed to maintain the sporting side of it. Like, it was a high level of school rugby, So like Johnny Wilkinson would be a name that I played against at school level. He went on to represent England, one of the best ever players, blah, blah, blah. So I still managed to maintain that side of things, but yeah, the school was the bit that fell away for sure. Yeah. So by the time I got to GCSE level, it was the wrong school for me. If I had gone to a school that wasn't so strict, I wouldn't have probably spent so much time rebelling and maybe a bit more time sort of learning and being into what I was there to do, really. But I just pushed back is what I was doing, I think. So I was like, by the time my GCSEs come around, I didn't even give a fuck. I had a spliff and walking down the canal on the way to my exams. You know what I mean? I didn't give a shit. So yeah, so that all, yeah. The education side of it fell away for sure. Just wasn't into it. It was too militarized.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Like regimented,
your top button had to be done up even in the height of summer. Black woolly blazer. They had teachers stationed in the underground tube stations, at least 2 stations away from the school,
to make sure
you were still representing the school properly with your, like, madness. So when you boil that down into the classroom and how teachers used to teach you, and they weren't teaching you anything anyway. They weren't teaching you to learn. They were teaching you to memorize. Like, I was disenfranchised. Like, this is bullshit. It's boring. So they just lost me in that respect. You know, I didn't have any teachers that could help me. But teachers would either love me or they'd hate me. I had teachers who I could go and talk to. Like, do you know what I mean? And then other teachers just thought I was a waste of space. Yeah. So it's interesting.
One question that always intrigues me, I ask everyone. When you were younger, did you have an idea of who you wanted to be or what you wanted to do? Did you have
No, that's an easy question for me to answer. No. So I've got a good example. So my family, my auntie, my cousin, first cousin, similar age to me in Ireland. He had 2 older brothers. He's quite the opposite to me. He always knew what he wanted to do, right? So he ended up playing for Ireland. He was a British Lion, like top of his sport globally. Always knew what he wanted to do from a young age. And I was quite the opposite. I was like, I have no idea. I was just sort of floating through life. I also add that when I was younger, maybe not so consciously, but there was an element of like being preoccupied with like surviving, or maybe, you know, dealing with a lot, seeing a lot. As I got a bit older, I was a very angry young man. As I became a man, I was a very angry young man, just because I felt like I got dealt a raw hand, you know. So I went off the rails a bit there for probably about 10 years at that point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is after school?
Yeah, just coming out towards the end of it, just around that GCSE time, yeah. I was like, fuck these GCSE. I couldn't give less of a fuck about those exams. So I was already just getting high and doing all that other stuff that I was doing at the time. But yeah, it all led from that until I got to about 30. I was just gone. Gone, yeah.
So when you left, so I take you left school, no grades?
No grades, no
So
grades.
did you take the GCSEs, or was it just like, fuck
I did the GCSEs, but I didn't even open the results. I was at my mate's house partying. My mum said, "Oh, your results are in." I goes, "You can read them." I didn't even care.
Yeah.
I remember that. And we were at a GCSE sort of grades sort of party. We were all there smoking and that. And everyone was getting their letters and opening them up and saying, I was like, I don't even give a fuck. Like, don't even have my letter with me. Don't give a shit.
So talk to me about that part of your life then. So from not caring about the results, that 10-year period, what happened? What did you get up to?
Yeah. Oh, shit.
'Cause you're a different person.
Yeah,
The person I know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah. So, at 17, so I never had any money growing up, right? There was no pocket money. That didn't exist in our house. So by the time I got to that age, I was ready to go and earn something. So I was happy to finish school and just go out and just start working. I think I worked in like a sports shop or something. Olympus Sport in Hammersmith, actually, if I can remember that right. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It wasn't a lot of money, but I had some money. But then all of a sudden, my mum was like, I get half of your wage on the table. That's too much. So we fell out about money and that, to the point where she was just like, right, if you're not going to pay what I want you to pay, you can move out. So I was like, all right, I'm gone then. So I went down the road with no plan, walked into a pub, we were watching England play football or something, because you could get away with being a bit underage.
Yeah, you could
back then, with depending on where you were at. And I was tall and that. Anyway, so I was there and I was watching this guy behind the bar, and he was just doing a shit job. And I just said to the lady, I didn't even know she was the boss or whatever, I just said, is this guy taking the piss? And she looked at me like that and goes, think you can do better? I said, damn straight. So she said, come see me tomorrow. Amanda, her name is. Amanda Dumont. So I went down the next day and she was like, you want to give it a go? I said, yeah, absolutely. One thing, what? I need somewhere to live. Because you had a lot of living jobs back then, right? So I was like, somewhere to live. She goes, I might have something for you in about 2 months, but nothing right now. So I went straight home. I was like, 2 months, I'm gone. Can I stay 2 months? So that was it. So 17 and a half I was at that point. So I was gone. But I was already sofa surfing from the age of like 12, 13. Home wasn't the best place to be. So I started sofa surfing at 12, 13. By the time I hit them GCs, I was never at home. I was out of a backpack at friends' houses. So the moving out just didn't seem like such a big deal at that point. But, so that happened. And then it would be fair to say that I did not leave that building for 2 years. So all the women I wanted came to the pub. All the extra things that I wanted came to the pub. We had a kitchen upstairs. I lived there. I worked there. All the fun that you wanted to be having, like, you know, physically I did, but like there wasn't much reason to leave the building. So delved into a crazy world with some crazy characters from around the way. There's a strong rock and roll history around the area as well. So like, delved into that rock and roll scene, and just did a lot of drugs, man. A lot of drugs. I went to space for a few years. I was in pubs for quite a while.
So after 2 years there, you moved
after 2 years, I just did. So what I ended up doing is moving down to Brighton for a year. Mm-hmm. I moved down to Brighton in a tent, actually.
In a tent?
with my girlfriend. We moved down in a tent, moved into a hostel above a bar, and then within 6 months, we just got a few heads together and we got a house. So I was there for about a year and a half. The drug taking carried on, but it was work hard, play hard, right? So I'll be doing 15-hour days in the pub, going to after parties somewhere, getting 4 hours sleep, and then back to another 15-hour day. I looked at pictures of me back in hindsight of me, and I looked so ill.
Yeah,
I wasn't sleeping.
I like to see. I
wasn't sleeping. I wasn't eating. I had like a green complexion with dark eyes. I looked like a proper druggie.
Oh wow.
Anyway, moved back up to Ladbroke Grove, like West London area. Ended up, a mate of mine suggested that I go and have a chat with this lady who owned a bar on the Portobello live music venue on the Portobello Road, Ladbroke Grove, called the Mau Mau Bar. So I'm like, yeah, nothing to lose. We'll go down and talk to her. Anyway, got this job. So I'm 21, I think I am, 22, something like that. I'm running a live music venue in a fucking cool place, and I get a flat with it, right? So I can drink what I want. I'm 21. Like tourists from all over the world are coming to like see these, like, I don't know what, these cool people, these weird people, whatever. And I'm there and I'm living the life, living the life. So the madness continues, right? And then my girlfriend's up there studying in Liverpool. She's studying French. And all of a sudden, 1 year of her French studies has to be in a French-speaking country. So growing up in basically a West Indian community, she was like, "I will go to the Caribbean, to Martinique, French-speaking. She can teach English." So I said, "Look, either I come with you, or we call it a day." So he's like, "Oh, come." So I went and I lived in Martinique for a year. Nice. So I was basically mainly Martinique, but I spent a lot of time in Dominica, St. Lucia, and Guadeloupe. So all of a sudden now, I'm in this country where English is like the third or fourth spoken language. I don't speak French ever. Unemployment is at like 35%, 40%. Oh, what am I going to do? But it's a Department of France, right? So the French government look after you quite well. So like half our rent was paid because I was there, and like half all of this stuff. So anyway, I'm just chilling. So like on the weekends, I'm going up to Mont Blanc, which is the top half of the island, chilling with the Rastas, like carving calabash, smoking pot and that. I'm like, shit, man, I'm in heaven. This is the best. Anyway, the relationship falls apart over time, and I'm back into London, sofa surfing again, just like I was when I was 12, 13, 14. I'm like, shit, full circle, like here I am. Lived a bit of a mad adventure, but like, damn, I'm here, I'm at point one again. And then this just continued till I'm about 30, and I'll just carry on because the story's flowing quite nice. So ultimately what this ends up in is me around 30 years of age, still living this mad life, still taking all the shit. And then all of a sudden, a series of things happen that taught me a lot. And I was homeless. It felt like I woke up one day and I was homeless. So I was renting privately. The guy I was renting with was a guy I grew up with, but he fucked me over. We started a fledgling business together. He pinched all the money, he fucked off. I paid for half of all the shit, but he took all the money, refused to pay it. So all of a sudden, in the space of a week or two, I was like, bam, I'm homeless. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, what am I going to do? So there's a level of shame. I was like, I grew up around here. What am I going to do? So anyway, I made the choice. I'm going to stick around. I'm going to squat. I'm not staying on the street. I'm going to squat and I'm going to fucking hustle. So that's what I did for a year and a half. And a beautiful man called David Hughes, dear friend of mine, was working for council, but he was helping people who were struggling with unemployment and housing and stuff. And he said, Colin, there's a course up in Willesden. You can do a painters and decorators course if you want. I've got a spot. You can have it. Never thought about that before. But I was just like, yeah, let's do it. So at night time, I'm scaling the rooftops of empty houses to fucking stay in them. In the daytime, I'm going to college. And in between, I'm just trying to hustle and do what I can. Anyway, finish the course, end up getting a job. And over the course of the summer, I managed to save a few £1,000s. So, okay, I've got enough for a deposit on something here. Got myself somewhere to stay. 2 years later, I'm cleaned up, I'm married. So I guess that was my rock bottom. And I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but that was my rock bottom. And I was just like, nah, something has to change. So the 15 years of debauchery and madness kind of comes to an end at that point. I mean, if I don't do something now, I'm going to end up like one of these guys down the road. So that was it. That was the change, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
When
and then maybe a bit more of the guy than you met.
I was gonna say, when did we meet in this whole?
Yeah. So let's just have a look at the timeline now. So, and again, because of
you weren't squatting
again because of all of that. Because of all of the extracurricular activities I was up to, the memory is not.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you spend so much time in space.
Yeah.
But I would say around 30 odd was when I was homeless. By 32, I had met Fee, who is now my wife.
How did you guys meet? Sorry, that's
cool.
How did you guys meet?
So my mate was running a pub up in Chelsea. She was a typical Aussie, taking her 2 years to travel over here. She was working with him. He was like, I think there's someone you should meet. So we started hanging out, but we weren't boyfriend and girlfriend for about 6 months. And then he told me to come and work with him is how I started to pull away from that other life. Got me back into things, because I was in pubs a lot. So got me back into it, but there's a very different pub scene at that point. We're not talking live music venues where I get free right there. And this was working for the lady who owned and started, not Pret a Manger, Café Rouge.
Yeah, that was nice.
So it's a bit more
nice,
sort of like business orientated, bit more focus. So he brought me into the fold there. Anyway, I ended up taking over his pub before long. And then I basically sacked her because I was like, we can't work together. And so that was that. And then once that happened, it was all good. Anyway, her 2 years were pretty much up. So we had a decision to make. So there was a little bit of risk around me asking her to marry me. But I think we were pretty sure. So anyway, that happened. Got married, started having kids. When we fell pregnant, we were like, okay, buying somewhere and paying a mortgage was cheaper than the rent in London. So we were like, listen, let's make the move. Bought a house down in Farnborough in Hampshire. But I was still commuting in. I think at this point, I'd walked away from the pubs in the interim here. Memory not too good. And I didn't work for like 8 months. And then I was just like, okay, what am I going to do? Well, what did I love doing when I was little? Sport, fitness. So I thought, okay. So I ultimately went and started training every day. What I started doing was running in the dark at like 4:30 in the morning. I was in Dalston at this time, just around Hackney Way. I used to run along the canal to Victoria Park. So I just started running around the track there. And I started running. And then I became an operations manager of a high-end gym down in the banking area. But then had the kids, just flipping back. Bought a house down in Farnborough, so I was commuting in and it wasn't working. And all of a sudden this guy calls me, say, hey, I work for a car sales company. Just want to invite you to come and have a coffee and a chat. So I was like, yeah, nothing to lose in it. I was looking for something because the commute was killing me. Sat down and had a chat with this guy.
Was it the same guy that called me?
It probably was the same guy that called you, yeah.
Scottish.
Yeah, I can't remember his name, man. Small fella.
Brendan McManus.
Yeah. So Brendan had a twinkle in his eye, and I've met many men like him before. But we had a good chat or whatever. And at the end of the interview, I goes, Brendan, I've got to ask you one question. I don't know nothing about cars, bro. Like, what makes you think I can sell cars? And he just chuckled. He goes, Colin, based on the conversation, I think you do quite well. I was like, okay. And it was just a shot in the dark. I never saw myself doing sales. My background was hospitality. But I was like, it was half an hour from where I bought the house. I was like, I'll get a little car with it as well, yeah? Oh, okay. All right. Let's give it a go. So, yeah, so that's when I started entering the world of sales. Yeah.
And not look back.
Well, yeah, so it put me in good stead because, of course, if you know how to, as we were saying on the drive up, like they taught me the fundamentals of sales. They were scallywags, but they taught me the fundamentals of sales. And I've sold many things now. And of course, you can go anywhere in the world selling if you understand the process. And I find it interesting. I find people interesting. I find negotiation interesting. I find the game, but reading between the lines, the levels, the layers. I find all of that interesting. So yeah, I've stuck with sales ever since then. Yeah. But I'm cleaned up at that point. You know, I only got my driver's license 2 weeks before I started that job.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So you got a clean driver's license? I will have. Yeah. And I'm driving cars around the lot there. There's 400 cars sitting there. I'm like, I'm going to crash the car, damage these cars. So I think I was called Driving Miss Daisy when I first started working there.
Were you?
Slow, yeah. Jamal, I think, called me.
Yeah.
Called me Driving Miss Daisy.
Good times, isn't it?
It was great times. Great times. Yeah. But then my life's on track, kids on the way. You know, I got a job. I did well enough in that job that my missus could take a year off with that kid. And we still managed to save up to move to Australia ultimately, which happened, I think, 2 years later or something like that. Yeah.
So what's Australia like, man?
Big step change. But from Ladbroke Grove and for everything I knew, worlds apart. But I was ready for it, I reckon, at that point. I'd hit my rock bottom, as I mentioned, and I was on the way up. And I'd been there for a holiday, and I was like... So I went for a walk one day, and I used to love my nature documentaries, yes. Puff a bit of weed at the end of the day. That's how I'd chill out, watch some nature documentary or whatever. And then anyway, I'm walking one day, and like, I see the stingray flip out right next to me, 10 feet in the air, bam, gone. And then I'm walking, and I'm out by the sea, and I see these dolphins surfing with the surfers. And then a big osprey, bird of prey, comes out over my head, like, and it's just right there, I can almost touch him. And I keep walking out, and then I've got humpback whales. So I'm like, this is madness. It's like I'm walking through a nature documentary. And I was always into it. We drove 20 meters inland into the hills. I'm bathing under waterfalls and swimming in lagoons and crystal sand white beaches. And I'm like, is this fucking paradise or what? Like, anyway, I said, I fancy a bit of this. I was ready for the change. Kids were here. I was like, I can see my kids running around this. This is what a nursery to bring up your kids, you know what I mean? So in my mind, it was early after the first trip back with Fee. I was like, this is going to happen. We're going to happen here. But Fee was in love with England. She had a romantic notion of London. So she took some convincing. So anyway, 8 years, 9 years later, whatever it was, we're finally ready to make the move, yeah. Which was just after, started the cars, met you, did what we did and all that sort of stuff. And then we were there. So yeah, very different, but exactly the place I need to be right now. So my dad was never around, as I mentioned. So from that can affect you in a number of different ways, right? It affected my brother in one way. My brother has no relationship with his 4 girls. But for me, it affected me differently. So from an early age, I knew I was going to be a good dad. I must have been 14, 13, and I started thinking about what kind of dad I would need to be one day. So what my challenge is as a father is actually pulling back and not trying so hard. Maybe I try a bit too hard sometimes. But by my dad not being there, he gave me that gift. It's like, I will always be there 100 for my kids. So it's the best place to be. If I was in round Ladbroke Grove and stuff now, I probably wouldn't be cutting the mustard as a dad. But here it is fantastically boring in the nicest possible way. So I can just focus on what I need to focus on and do the best job with them boys, yeah. It's a racist country, though.
It's a what?
Racist country.
In what sense?
It's just fucking... They don't even know they're racist. That's how racist they are.
But in what, racist to like everyone, or black people, or Indian people,
everyone.
Chinese people.
So so of course there's an indigenous black population there, but different challenges. And also, remember, I'm Irish, so the history of Ireland. I was talking to someone, this is a little bit off. I was talking to someone the other day, Richie. He lives out in Barbados now, since COVID. And he educated me about the Irish slaves and the transatlantic slave trade and the Caribbean islands and America. And he was like, do you know all my granny and my aunt, they're all called Maureen and all Irish names. I was like, really? And he started educating me a bit about it. So I looked into it a little bit. It's interesting. If you don't know about white Irish slaves, and it weren't just Irish people, Slavics as well, Slavs. But rednecks, American rednecks, were the Irish slaves. Okay. They ended up working in the house because they couldn't take the work outside. So there was a bit of a separation in terms of duties and that. But initially, it was all part of the madness. So just to bring it back, I'm going over there and like my father-in-law's telling me, black guys, this, black guys, that, challenges within society. But I'm like, I grew up in Ladbroke Grove, so I'm like, when I went to the Caribbean, like there were parts. We were in a ghetto called Lamontin. Dangerous. But the first thing I did, I was like, nah, I'm good for this. So I befriended them all. All the guys on the corner, I befriended them all because they were all St. Lucians over earning the euro, so they all spoke English. I was like, right, I need to make sure she's safe. So I just started befriending all these guys. So I felt well equipped. But when I went into Australia, I realised very quickly that the challenges are different. Of course, colonisation was not that long ago, really, in the grand scheme of things, over there. So I would just say that the whole thing was a much rawer over there. And it's very, very separated.
Okay, like segregated, so.
Yeah, and as much by the Aboriginal community, like that's how they want it. Like, there's a place down the road from me called Crabtree Island, and no word of a lie, if a white person went there, they probably wouldn't be coming back out.
Well, it's like that. It's militant.
It's like a small island. You got to remember, I live in a rural coastal town. Yeah, it's not big Sydney or Melbourne. And you go down some farm tracks, and then there's this, like the Richmond River's big and wide. And in the middle, there's this little island called Crabtree Island. It's about 17, 18 dwellings on this thing. One road in, one road out.
Wow.
And like, you are not welcome there. Do you know what I mean? So there's lots of challenges.
Can I ask a question? Have you befriended them yet?
Very difficult. Very, very difficult to.
Because I know what you like. I know you can't go in and out of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would love to, of course. That's just me. But that's what I'm saying. It's quite different. I felt ready for that type of scenario, but I realised very quickly, this is different. Like, not that I don't. I do. But they are not. They're not welcoming. They have no interest.
You can't blame them, to be fair.
No, not at all.
You know what I mean?
Not at all. If they don't like, it's challenging.
The last time they let a white guy in, you know what I mean? Probably, you know, and the stories are probably coming from grandparents. You know what I mean?
Like, the first thing you sense is like, all of that is still very raw.
It's very,
very raw. You got to remember the stolen generation, they had their kids taken off them.
What do you mean stolen generation?
So in Australia, if you're interested in the history, like look up the stolen generation. So Aboriginal kids were taken away from their parents, put into institutions, and taught white shit.
But how are they functioning now then, these kids? Because now they're adults.
Well,
they're grandparents.
So they're all fucked up in it. When you're taken away from your culture. And
no, but are they assimilated? What I mean are they?
No, they're not assimilated. They're disenfranchised. Okay. It's a mad thing, right? Because when you look at this disenfranchised demographics in our cultures where we grew up, London, England, maybe America, you see some things like alternative culture, like hip hop. Like when I was, the messages, and when you listen to, when education wasn't working for you, like me, and then you listen to like wordsmiths like the Wu-Tang Clan, for example. It's like, okay, there's education here, so like you buy into it, right? I lose track of what I'm saying now. What was the point I was making? Fuck.
disenfranchised. We were talking about the lost. Yeah, and how they've assimilated. How they've assimilated. Yeah.
So I see some similarities, right? So like cultural influence. So like there's lots of similarities, but actually like I was disenfranchised, and I see some of my behaviours in them, like just poor behaviour to your kids as well. But their problems are unique. So like anything, like Israel and Palestine or any war, one of the byproducts is another 2 generations of hate between those two people. It's not just confined to the one generation. It's multiple. It's multi-generational, the problem. So these kids got taken away from their parents, put into white schools, taught white ways and all of that sort of stuff. So they come out at the end of that process, they're messed. They're messed up. And they got treated very poorly as well. And there was a lot of interbreeding as a part of that whole process. So it was madness. So if you look into it,
I'm gonna look into it.
It will take you on a journey.
Yeah.
And Australia now, like my father-in-law, good man, but he's racist. He doesn't even see it as racism. I'm like, dude, there's certain things you can't be saying. So we have you can imagine that.
But I suppose where he lives, that's, you know what I mean? Like if you live if you're not in a populated area, like you can't be around here and have those you can have them views, but you would stand out. But I suppose where he lives, having that view is probably normal behaviour.
Yeah, I don't want to detract from how serious that is, because racism does another conversation.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't even, racism doesn't even make.
I'm just trying to look at the logic of how somebody can be a decent person but still have views. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I'll try and explain how I think he sees it. So racism, it doesn't make any sense. It's not even a real thing. Yeah. If you're racist or you have racist views, you have been a bit of a Neanderthal and you've allowed people to influence you in some bullshit way. Because actually, it doesn't make any sense. Especially when you're talking about a country like this that was built on immigration and colonization. Irish people, it's very current now and topical now. Irish people standing up around the whole immigration policy in Ireland. It's like no one's emigrated more than Irish people. They're everywhere, all over the world. So how can you sit down and be racist? It doesn't make any sense. In London, back in the day, 60s, 70s, no blacks, no Irish, no dogs. Used to be up in the windows. So like, I sit there and I listen to people at certain point of views and I'm like, it's madness. It doesn't make any sense. You must be so stupid. So racism to me doesn't even make sense. So to bring it back and make the point is, Phil, I think he thinks it like a farmer. Think about like how the farmers and rural communities looked at foxes and fox hunting versus the city dwellers. Yeah. I can't think of any other reason why he says some of the things he says, apart from there's just different problems. You know what I mean? But to boil it down, to talk about any other human being the way some of those guys do, it's just bigotry. So
it's outright.
It's just raw bigotry.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's crazy.
That's crazy. Yeah.
So they are way behind on the journey of moving on from that. There's certain places and societies.
But is it like that in the big cities as well, you think? Or?
No, less so.
Yeah,
less
more in the rural areas.
Yeah, that's why I tried to make the comparison from like farmers to
city
dwellers and different challenges in that micro society.
Microcosm, yeah.
But Australia is institutionally racist. But nothing changes unless people talk about it and stuff.
Very true.
It's important to... Like, I've never been shy of having a conversation about anything. Do you know what I mean? But people, we live in a world where people would rather not have the conversation and rather shut it down. I think we're in dangerous territory when we start entering.
We don't have conversations.
Yeah, there's problems. That's why podcasts and stuff like that. I reckon when we will look back at this moment in history
society,
and we'll realise how important this podcast movement.
That's why I like it. At the end of the day, we're documenting information that's relevant to us and whoever else might
discourse.
Might relate to it. Exactly.
Open discourse. Just talk. Like, it's important. And when society stop talking like that, then you have problems like the Nazi movement, and you have things like that.
Yeah.
So history does repeat itself.
Very true.
And we're on touchy ground, I think, or we're heading towards.
On that note, we're gonna tag in Carl.
Let's do it.
Yeah?
Let's do it.
Cool. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe.